Welcome, friends, to Farm Fresh Designs 59. When you have two granddaughters that stay with you in the summertime, we do princess everything. So when I saw this piece in the thrift shop, it reminded me of a princess castle. Now the hole up at the top held a cardboard piece that had a clock attached to it that no longer worked, and you would open it up from the back. So I took it outside and I spray painted it with flat black paint to go ahead and prime it and to cover up all of those designs. And then I spray painted it with white. And then, because I knew I was putting transfers on it, I went on and sealed it. Because, you know, when you add transfers to something, you need to put that sealer on first so that the transfers go on well. So the clock face was on a heavy piece of cardboard, and I took it out and I outlined around the transfer, that circle, and then transferred that on with the intentions of getting a new clock face from Hobby Lobby. And this transfer is from Timeless Designs, and it's called Memories of Paris. Now at the bottom, there was another circle, and what I did was I took some thin piece of parchment paper and I just laid it on top of that circle and ran my finger around the edge to get how big that circle needed to be, and then I cut out the transfer from that. Now on either side of this metal box, there were two long skinny pieces that I was going to add transfers to as well. Now what I really like about this transfer is it's got beautiful colors in it, but it has a lot of script writing. And you know, if you've used transfers before that have script writing on it, then you can cut it up and it doesn't all have to flow together. You can mix and match different pieces of it and it looks like it's been put together all seamless. So I kind of just eyeballed what I wanted to put on either side as far as the florals went. And then I just would go and cut up different pieces of the transfer and add that to it. And it turned out really pretty on the sides. So once I had all of the transfers put on, I burnished it, which means you take the plastic that it kind of is attached to and you just rub it down and it gets all of those pieces that might just not be attached really well, and it just pushes them down. Now, my intentions were to buy a new clock piece at Hobby Lobby. And I went to Hobby Lobby and they didn't really have a lot of pieces. So I bought the one that had the smallest little, I guess, I don't know what it's called, but it's like the little stick that sticks up and then you put the clock hands on it. So I bought the smallest one they had. And then you had to buy the little arms of the clock separately. And when I attached all of it to that piece of cardboard up at the top that was going to be the clock face, it didn't fit. The little stick that kind of stuck up from the clock, whatever that word is, it just was too long. So I didn't have any other options at Hobby Lobby as far as like putting on a clock face. So I just used those little clock hands and I just glued them on there, and then I put like a little clay mold of a flower on top of that just to make it look like a clock. So it's more for show than anything. But do you like this? Now the next piece is just a round box that I found at the thrift shop, and it was not as big as a hat box, but it was still a rather large box. So the piece of rice paper that I found, it was a picture of a bride and groom and their clothes. So the main design, I just tore it off with the rice paper and I attached it to the top. And I believe it was from the company Stamperia. I'll try to find it and link it if I can. Now it had other parts to the rice paper, but I didn't want to add that. But I wanted something on the sides of the box to kind of blend it all together. So what I did was I took some of a discarded napkin that I have left over when I use napkins to decoupage, and I stamped one of the new pieces from the IOD stamp called Adornment that I thought kind of matched well with the design. And I stamped it with archival ink from Ranger, and the color was called Potting Soil. So I just stamped on that napkin several times, and then when I was attaching that napkin to the top of the lid, or I'm sorry, on the side of the lid, I just would kind of marry those pieces together and make it look all seamless. And I was using DIY liquid patina to attach it. And then what I do is I go ahead and stamp some more of it and put another row of that decoupage stamped napkin down at the bottom and made it all kind of look seamless together. And I just thought it turned out really pretty. Now, I really like this new IOD stamp. Not only does it have long pieces that you can stamp, but it also has corner pieces and rounded pieces. So it offers a lot of different things that you can use when you are stamping on pieces. Now, the reason that I have those ear swabs on the side and that paint can on the other is just to hold that box steady. Now, one of the things that I've learned through listening to different YouTube videos is to take a piece of like saran wrap or cellophane paper and just press that down lightly, and it pushes that napkin down, and it really eliminates a lot of the wrinkles. And since I've learned this trick, I've used it a lot, and I can't believe I've waited this long to be able to do this because it makes it do so much better. So tell me something. What is your favorite princess story? I can tell you what my granddaughter's favorite stories are, but because of copyright reasons, I'm really not sure if I can say the names of those, so I just won't. So here's the top of the box. Isn't that so pretty? And look at the side. Oh, I love it. Now the next piece is a book box, and it's one of those boxes that you find at the thrift shop that looks like a book, and it's like a really, really heavy piece of cardboard. Now I apologize for not getting the front part videotaped, but it's also a piece of rice paper from that Stamperia, and it's a picture of like a princess castle. And it has a lot of different wording around it, and it has one big piece of wording that says once upon a time, which is, you know, what a lot of the fairy tales start with, and a lot of the fairy tales about princess. So I painted the box white, and now what I'm doing is I'm using the IOD mold called Trimmings 3. Now, initially what I wanted to do was I wanted to stamp into some clay from that same adornment stamp, but I just couldn't make it look right. So I pulled out the Trimmings 3 mold, and the piece that I'm using looks somewhat like maybe the I think they're called spires that you would have at the top of a castle. It just kind of reminded me of that. So that's what I used, and I use DOS air dry clay, and you put it into the mold. You need to put cornstarch down, and then I just press it down, and then I go back with like an old credit card or an old gift card and push that down to make it real flat. And then I'm just going to add it to the spine of this book box. Now I go ahead and paint all of that white, and it's when it's good and dry, then I go back with a gold gilding wax by DIY Paint. So I'll go ahead and I'll start brushing it on all around the edges, and you can see up at the top that once upon a time, and then right beside it, just in the corner, is I actually took some of the wording from the little story that went along with it, and I decoupaged that up at the top, and then I took some more pieces of that writing and just added it here and there to add interest to it. It doesn't really show up that well until you look at it close, and it just adds an extra layer to it. So I'm just brushing all around the edges of the box, and I go ahead and brush on this gold gilding wax onto the spine. Isn't that such a pretty design? Now, after a while, I get tired of brushing it on, so I just go ahead and start rubbing it on with my finger to make sure that I get it in all the spots. Now, I didn't do anything to the inside of the box because it really had a nice inside that had like a fabric lining to it, so I didn't really want to do anything to it. But don't you love that big castle on it? I just think it's so pretty. And this might just be something you would give to somebody that's getting married to put wedding mementos in, or even for a little girl. But it's just a good storage piece. Now, the next piece is just a plain piece of wood that I painted white. It's like a long, skinny piece. And this mold is from Zuri, Z-U-R-I. And I found it on Etsy. And oh my gosh, it is so beautiful. It's of a princess carriage. So it takes a lot of air dry clay because it's kind of large. And I attached it to that piece of wood with Titebond glue, and I painted it with Rust-Oleum Linen White chalk paint. And now what I'm doing is I'm brushing on that gilding wax, and I'm brushing it on really, really heavy. Now, the next thing I do is I just take a thin piece of balsam wood and I paint it white as well. And I'm going to attach it over to the side. And I use some little wood blocks to kind of elevate it on top of that sign just to add extra interest and an extra layer to it. And on that small white piece of wood, then I add a mold from Redesign with Prima that's got like a little clock on it. And initially I had stamped on just a napkin with just some alphabet stamps when the clock strikes 12. Well, I didn't like the way it turned out, so I just took that off. And then I went to Hobby Lobby, and I actually just found some stamps. I'm sorry, not stamps, but stickers that were gold metallic. And I just added that when the clock strikes 12. Because this reminds me so much of that fairy tale where the princess goes to the ball in the carriage, and then when the clock strikes 12 and she has to leave, it's turned back into a pumpkin. But this mold is so beautiful, and there's so much detail to it. And it's going to look great in the fall on top of a pumpkin. Now, it's going to be a pretty fancy pumpkin, but can't you just see adding that to a pumpkin and how pretty that would be? Now, beside that carriage is where I add that extra piece of like balsam wood that I've painted white. So tell me something. When you were a little girl, was this one of your favorite fairy tales? I always loved it. And then I actually went to the thrift shop really hoping that I could find a glass slipper to put in my vignette, but I didn't have any luck. But that's not something that you see at thrift shops. And then I went on Etsy to see if I could find one. Well, they were all more like cake toppers, and I thought, no, I'm not going to buy one. But I really like how it turned out. And it's just a pretty little sign that I just added to the vignette. But I'm going really heavy on that gold wax because I want it to just be really shiny and really fancy. So what do you think about this sign? Do you like it? And would you have added anything else to it? Now here's that just little piece of wood that I painted white, and you can see how I started out stamping some alphabet words onto some napkins, but I just didn't like the way it turned out, so I just didn't even do that. And I took that off. I kind of scraped it off, and I went to Hobby Lobby and got those stickers. So this is that clock face that is from Redesign with Prima that I added to it. But I really do like this little sign. I think it's really sweet. And I'll put it in my booth at the little vendor store that I have. And this wouldn't necessarily have to be for a bride. I just think it's a really sweet little sign that a little girl could put on her shelf with all of her little crowns, or, maybe even somebody that has that's in pageants. This would be a really sweet little sign to make for them. And here's what it looks like. Is that not gorgeous? Now, my last piece is just something really plain. It's just a little thrifted clock that I found, and I painted it white. And all I'm doing now is I'm just putting the gold gilding wax all over it. Now, the round part, it was another one of those things that came with the clock, but the clock didn't work on that either. That's probably why they took it to the thrift shop. And so I actually had another clock that had one of those detachable clocks that you could kind of stick inside that hole. So I didn't like that clock as much, so I just pulled it out and put it in this one. But look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Okay, so here's the whole piece, the whole vignette. Okay, guys, so tell me, what is your favorite piece today? I like all of them. I'm not sure which one is my favorite. I really like this piece right here, just because I love this transfer so much. But I really, really like that little sign that I made. And friends, thank you so much for all of your support. I am at like over 1,800 subscribers in just such a short amount of time. And it's all because of you and how you've just made me feel so supportive. And I've been able to do a lot of videos. And I just want to thank you so much. So if you like this video today, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, go ahead and do that, because I've got some new videos coming up next week. And oh, I can't wait for you to see some of them. There's one that I'm just so excited about, and I've been working on it. And actually, I did all of this last week because I slipped off and went to the beach for a few days with my daughter's family. And so I had to go ahead and get all of this done beforehand, because when I came back, I knew I would be babysitting and I wanted to have it all ready. So which one's your favorite? Don't you love that clock? And then I added all of the little extra things like jewelry and pearls and the little mirror and brush. But make sure to like and subscribe to my channel. Leave me a comment. Tell me which one was your favorite today. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure to hit that notifications button so you'll know when my next video comes up. Have a great day.